First of all, it is so easy to love you because you are so lovable and loving and such a profound teacher of love. And I did not know what to expect from your new book because I felt as though you've already said so much. I was like, what else would she say that she hasn't already said? What would this book have to tell me? What would it have to teach me? And this new book that I'm holding in my hands, The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love, I literally couldn't stop underlining things and I wrote a bunch of things. I could probably sit here with you till the end of time. Um, it's like listening to jazz. This book is just so stunning. And you've done it again. Like literally, you have found yet another way to download the truth in the most incredibly smooth, accessible, profound way. And you and I have, I dare to say, a few things in common. And I so fell in love with this book. As a Jewish girl, as a deeply spiritual person, you gave me so much in this book. So I just want to say thank you so much for being you and for writing this book.
Well, I can't thank you enough for the things that you just said. It means the world to me. And when you write a book, you're off by yourself and you're hoping that some sentence you write is an aha moment for someone, but you don't know. And then the book comes out, and I know I've been at book signings where somebody would bring me their book, and I'm so fascinated to open it up and see, what did you underline? What is the yellow, marker on? So it means everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope that we will have more opportunities, both privately as well as professionally, to share. And
I
your
mean,
kindness is much appreciated, I tell you.
the level of humility, I mean, it's kind of stunning to me, but it obviously makes all the sense in the world because you walk in this path. But it is stunning because you are part human, right? And like the fact that you can be that gracious is so beautiful. So I want to dive in. So I pick up this book and I'm like, all right, this is going to be a stretch for me, right? Like I'm very much a proud Jewish person. I love thinking about all the ways that humanity connects to love, but I haven't ever picked up a book and said, I really want to like dive into understanding more about Jesus. And everything you said was so, it was so powerful. And I want you to express, if you can, what you share in the beginning of this book about how what you're writing is a vehicle for all of us, for all of humanity.
Well, I'm Jewish as well, and a proud Jew as well. And when I was a child, I wasn't taught anything about Jesus. My mother would just say, "We don't read that one, honey. We read the other one, the other book, the other Bible," right? And I remember my mother, I don't know where she got this, but the only thing I ever heard my mother tell me about Jesus was, I think he was polite. Where she got that, I don't know where she got that, but that's what she used to say. So when I was in college, I took comparative religion classes. So I had read Christian theology, but it was within an academic context. I enjoyed reading, whether it was St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, and St. Teresa, etc. But when I was in my 20s, I was at a party one night in New York, and I saw a blue book sitting on the coffee table. Sometimes now you walk into bookstores and you see books without authors on the cover. But at that time, I'd never seen a book without an author on the cover. I just picked it up, I'm flipping through it. And I find the introduction fascinating because it says, "This is a Course in Miracles. It is a required course." Well, what book opens by saying this is you have to read this book? I thought it was so shocking. Now, the more you read it, the more you realize, no, it's not saying this form of a spiritual journey is required, but that life requires you to go through the processes that you need to go through ultimately to learn, to become wiser, to become more loving, and so forth. So I started flipping through the pages, and even though I was intrigued, I saw this Christian terminology. Because I'm Jewish, I thought, no, this just isn't for me. This is not school here. This is my personal life. then a year later, I saw a couple of people, 2 or 3 people during the year reading the book, like on the bus or something. But a year after I saw them, they landed on my dining room table. My then boyfriend had found them and so forth. And when I started reading the book, I realized, oh, this is not the Christian religion. This is traditional Christian concepts, but used in decidedly non-traditional ways. They are psychotherapeutic and ultimately you come to see, if you were into spirituality as I am, metaphysical presentations of these concepts that we think of in traditional religious terms. Now, what was interesting for me, which I talk about in the book, is that I was so excited reading this book. I was feeling so illumined. I was feeling so guided in terms of practical ways I could have a more peaceful life. And I assumed that my Christian friends, these terms, once I saw them in this way, meant so much to me. I naively thought that my Christian friends must talk about this all the time, but
Sure.
they just don't talk about it around me because I'm Jewish and they want to be polite. When I started suggesting such a thing, my Christian friends were horrified. What happened to me? Why have you become, born again Christian or whatever? And I realized it was very interesting. I realized that my having had no background, no preconceived notions of what these ideas meant, actually served me.
Yeah.
So I was just learning new concepts, and so many people I knew were having to unlearn old ones and had so many connotations regarding institutional religion, doctrine, and dogma, none of which is present in the Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you see these words this way, including Jesus himself, you see, this cannot be monopolized by any one religion. This is a spiritual force. And you also see how some of the traditional interpretations would actually obstruct that realization.
It is a force, and it's a force that's available for all of us. And I had a similar situation when I went to Jerusalem and I stayed in Jerusalem. It was supposed to be 3 weeks. I stayed for 3 years. And when I came home and I would talk to people about God, they thought I was crazy and they were triggered. And Rabbi Aaron, who's a mutual friend of ours and a very big mentor in my life, said to me, people think of God like Godzilla, like this thing that's out to get you. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting. Like my interpretation of this is so loving and so mystical and so ever present for all of us. It's the is, the was, the will be. And the words alone really were a barrier for people. And so I think similarly, I got access to even more of God's light from reading your book because you helped me deconstruct certain words and then really find life in so many portals, let's say, that I haven't even necessarily tapped into because of language. It's just really fascinating. So let's go a little bit deeper. Like, for instance, in the book, you talk about what is the mystic of Jesus and how are we all able to access that essence of what Jesus really is as the mystic?
Well, first of all the great religious teachings have the mystical tradition. In Islam, there's Sufism. In Judaism, there's the Kabbalah. And in Christianity, there has always been the mystical, esoteric traditions, always. I didn't invent something new.
Right.
And if you read Elaine Pagel's book, have you ever read the Gnostic Gospels?
No.
It's fascinating because what we think of as traditional Christianity presents itself as the only interpretation, as the only major artery of Christian thought. When if you really look back in history, religious scholars make it clear that at the beginning, there were two main arteries. And one had to do with an exoteric ecclesiastic tradition that would ultimately become the institutionalized Christian church that we all know of. But that from the beginning, there were those who had the more esoteric, internalized interpretation of both the life of Jesus and the meaning of the word Christ. First of all, even let's start with the word Christ. We all know the work of Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist. And he said that if you go deep enough into your mind and deep enough into mine, that there are mental images, or what he called archetypes, that we all share. The mystical interpretation of the Christ mind is that if you go deep enough into your mind and deep enough into mine, there's only one mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's a continuous river. Now, that leads to another place where there's this radically different interpretation of a line. There is only one begotten Son. The traditional Christian church says there is only one begotten Son, meaning Jesus is it. The mystical, esoteric interpretation of that line is God only created one of us. There's only one of us here. We are all one. And Jesus is seen as someone who lived on the earth. And the Course in Miracles says, by the way, he's not the only one. That's another radically different interpretation. If you see him as the only one versus one of others who have lived on the earth, but actualized completely the Christ mind, the one mind, and that they live on the earth, but with a consciousness that moves beyond separation. And you were mentioning a couple of minutes ago that one of the ways we separate ourselves is through words. And what a tragedy is that religious words are one of the ways we separate ourselves. So the idea here is that there's one truth spoken in many different ways. So when the Course in Miracles talks about Jesus, he is a name on the door, but he's not the only name on the door. And the Course in Miracles does say, if he is the name on the door, if he's the one who opens it for you, you don't need any other, but that doesn't mean there aren't others. The covenant of Judaism, for instance, to me, is not less important to me as a student of the Course in Miracles. And I think many people feel that way as students of the Course, that for some, it actually deepens their experience of their own religion, because you go into the mystical core wherever you are. That is the truth at the heart of all the great religious teachings of the world. Jesus himself, you know, nobody gets to monopolize the breeze. Nobody gets to monopolize outer space. Nobody gets to monopolize the wind, the rain. And so the idea that the very deepest identity of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
that core identity, which, once again, nobody's saying this is the only way to look at it, not from the Course in Miracles perspective, but whatever that is, one name for that one being is Jesus, one name. But the idea that the Christian religion can monopolize that is an idea whose time is passing.
Yeah, it's pretty profound, such a paradigm shift. Just to quote him one more time, something I just love on the wordplay, Rabbi Aaron often says to me, we are only someone because we're some of the one. And
Oh, exactly.
it is one
Yeah.
and one and one.
Yeah.
And something you say in the book, which I think is helpful for each of us, I love this so much. You said, we as people have an authorship problem. And
that's straight from the Course in Miracles.
And you say our grief is the longing to be who we really are, which I think implies this oneness, right? What do you want to share about that authorship problem?
Well, that's right from the Course in Miracles, where it says you think you authored yourself. And the author with a capital A, the same one who authored you, authored me. And in that identification with that, i.e. God of our understanding, that authored us all, we are one. In being one with God, we are one with each other. The pain that we feel living on this earth is that we think that we're not who we are, and we think that we are who we're not. We're taught that we're separate beings, and within the three-dimensional reality of the earthly experience, of course, we're separate. You're over there and I'm over here. But the spiritual idea is that on the level of spirit, there's really no place where I stop and you start. And that's why the golden rule is golden. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Because what you are doing to others, you are doing to yourself. So either they will show that back to you, or some other experience of life will show it back to you, because you're doing it to yourself. Now, Jesus is a name for that one self. So the Son of God means, from an esoteric perspective, all of us. When you say the word Jesus, you are reminded of that oneness that we all share. That's why if you're subconscious, and you work with your own subconscious mind, because God's spirit does work with a subconscious mind. If you walk into a room and you just have this image of Jesus going around the table, hugging everybody before you walk in. The idea here is that you're automatically reminding your own subconscious mind of the truth of the love that binds you. You will walk into the room, there will be something in your energy, something in your own perceptions towards other people, which is more charitable, more loving, more forgiving, more gracious.
Yeah.
But also it will affect other people's perception of you, because since all minds are joined, when you went to a new place, other people around you go to a new place as well.
100%. I've often felt that the most loving person in the room is the most powerful and the most wise. And we all wind up elevating to whatever's the highest consciousness in the space. Nothing is in. Go ahead. Go ahead.
One thing, when you said that, a lot of the book is about taking Christian stories, parables, etc., and reinterpreting them. And what you just said, you said, I feel that the most loving person in the room is the most powerful. An image in the Christ story that represents that is that the three kings got off their horses and knelt before the Christ child. So they represent the power of the world. But when the power of the world is confronted by the innocence within you, one image of which is the Christ child, that's when power is yours. So you think of the defenseless in you, the little child in you, the innocent in you, that which comes without the past, that which is there only to love, which we see in little infants all the time.
Yeah.
As that which makes us weak. The Course in Miracles, not the Course, the world says that's what makes you weak. But actually that image, no, that's what makes you strong. In exactly the ways you said. Now, this isn't about walking into a room and saying any of this. Usually a bad idea in today's world. It's about being this.
Being it.
But also, I think that there are ways. I think I said this actually. I made a big mistake. Well, I've made enough in my life. But this was turned out to be a huge professional error, actually. The Course in Miracles says the ego speaks first and the ego speaks last. No, I'm sorry. The ego speaks first and the ego speaks loudest. I was offered a tremendous professional opportunity. This was many years ago. And it brought up fear in me. I said, no, I don't want to do that, but thank you. Now, the person who I was with actually was someone to whom I could have safely said, can I take time to pray about it? She would have actually appreciated that. However, in most professional settings, all I had to say was, could I have some time to think about this, please? And any professional setting would have said, absolutely, can we talk on Monday? So you don't have to use religious terminology to practice living in a space of deeper reflection, asking, the Course in Miracles says that you get wisdom from other people, and definitely the Holy Spirit, the connecting link to God, speaks through others. But ultimately, it's when you are prayerful and you ask, should I do this? Should I not do this? Because there's a part of your mind that lives beyond time. Your connection to God knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Your connection to God knows how what you do will affect everyone. We've all had those experiences. Should I go to Boston? Should I go to Seattle? And you write down on a piece of paper, assets and debits. If I go to Boston, these are the good things. If I go to Seattle, these are the good things. And when you write it down on a piece of paper, your rational mind says Seattle. But something in you keeps saying, go to Boston. But you don't know about this stuff yet. You think your rational mind is all there is. And so you go to Seattle. 6 months later, 6 weeks later, 6 days later, something happens and it's so clear you should have been in Boston. You go, oh, I knew it. But the world as we know it doesn't necessarily tell you there's a wisdom within your heart. Yes, get the consult from the world, But ultimately, that's why I think Blaise Pascal said, the French philosopher said, every problem in the world stems from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Mm.
Prayer time, mindfulness, reflection, meditation, the workbook of the course, TM, whatever your practice is, it's in the quiet that we hear. What is in both Christianity and Judaism, the term small, still voice within. We're not a wise society. Nobody has any impulse control. We're all just so the last algorithm to catch our attention. So a spirit-centered life is one of much deeper peace and quiet, and much greater attention to that space within us, which is our wholeness,
Yeah.
which is the meaning of our holiness.
The very first piece of Jewish wisdom I ever learned was that the very first time the word Shabbat is used in the Torah is when Abraham is sitting at the foot of the tent, and it uses the same root of the word Shabbat, which is the word Shav, and it says, and God appears to him. And that's when I realized that the practice of Shabbat was to sit so that you would see what is hidden in plain sight.
Cathy, I want to tell you a story.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Please. Oh my gosh, please.
Many years ago, I was in Florida, and I was visiting an Orthodox Jewish family. I might have mentioned that in this story and in this book. I'm with an Orthodox Jewish family, and they invite me to stay for the weekend. And they're lovely people, and I'm excited. Then I realize on Friday, no, I mean, you grew up, Marianne, with the challah and the wine and burkata. No, and the candle. No, this is far more than that.
They're going all in.
Yeah, they're all in. Several children, teenagers, a very wired home, very modern, electronic equipment, the whole thing. And I begin to realize, oh no, they really do Shabbos. And everything at sundown, all electronics off. Nobody's going to use the phone or the car unless it's to pick someone up. And I'm thinking myself, I'm as addicted as the next person to my phone and my computer. This is going to be hard. And what unfolded in front of me was something so profound. Because for that day, all of the vectors of human relationship were recalibrated and corrected. And old people talking to teenagers, and teenagers talking to little babies and, brothers and sisters, and people connecting with one another. Nothing was going on except your relationship to other people, your relationship to the food, your relationship to the home. And that in that silence, in that space, everything just corrected itself. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't know if my parents did this so much, but I knew other people, other kids whose parents would like have date night and go dancing. And when I grew up, I saw, oh, I get what's happening in ballroom dancing. Our bodies are recalibrating. You can't just look to sex for that. You have to prepare all of the energy for that. And that quiet at the tens, what the Course in Miracles calls the holy instant.
You talk about in the book, there's so many things I want to touch on, but of course there's a whole section on miracles, and we know that this is, one of your greatest hits is helping us understand how to see the world through miracles. And you say it again, and you say it differently, and you say it just as good and even better, and it's so good. And so you remind us that Einstein said that we can't solve our problems from the same level of thinking that created them. And then you talk about this whole parallel universe of miracle consciousness that's always present that we can tap into. Talk about that, because boy, does every human I know want to learn how to manifest, right? And wants to know the quick way to the law of attraction. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, this is what manifestation is. It's plugging into this reality that's always available, that is on the miraculous level. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how we can all start to see through those eyes?
Well, the current vogue of mindfulness is a positive way that people are reminded to slow down and be with what is. Be still and know. The biblical line, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, all else will be added unto you. What that means is seek ye first the kingdom of heaven means seek ye first the awareness of our oneness. That is what heaven is. That's why the Course in Miracles says Jesus is someone who lived on the earth, but thought only the thoughts of heaven. This earth represents, there's a line in the Course in Miracles where it says, in the Bible, it says that Adam fell asleep, and nowhere does it say that he woke up. We're in a spiritual slumber. We've all heard the term the awakened ones. They are those who live on this earth, but with their inner eye open, their inner ear open. If your inner eye is open, it's that I see your innocence and your innocence and your innocence. You know, I ran for president this last year. I have a lot of forgiveness work to do of myself and others. And it's a lot of work. Just I'm willing to love this person. I'm willing to love that person. I'm willing to love that person. I'm willing to see beyond the errors. I'm willing to see beyond the guilt. I'm willing to see beyond the whatever word my mind is using to name it. So the Course in Miracles says, you find that space within yourself where your only interest is in forgiving. Your only interest is in seeing beyond guilt. Your only interest is in experiencing your oneness, just your willingness to be in that space. Literally recalibrates the universe. You're in, that is that realm. That realm is one in which every possible thing that could contribute to the highest happiness and the highest good of all living things is by definition unfolding in front of you at every moment. The only thing that can block that in your experience is your own lovelessness. Not only that, not only is the universe programmed, because the universe is the handwriting of God, and the mind of God is ever unfolding love, unconditional love for all living things. What you are seeking to manifest by walking in front of God is small stuff compared to what manifests when we step back and let him lead the way. The word Jesus and discipleship, remember, discipline and disciple come from the same roots. Seeking Jesus is a connecting link, it's a helper. So I'll give you an example. I might be in a situation where I'm judging someone and I'm feeling whatever. And you, as a friend, might say to me, oh, Marianne, come on, get over yourself. Come on, you're bigger than this. Lighten up. You know, you're just making a way bigger deal about this than is necessary. And I would say, oh, thank you, Kathy. I just needed a friend to remind me that. But it might be something where you say that to me and I go, the trigger is too big. The wound is too deep. The trauma of my childhood was too real. I can't. I think what they did to me is whatever. And that's where, whether it's Jesus or whatever other divine accompaniment you relate to, you say, I am willing. And what he says in the Course in Miracles is, my mind joined with your mind can shine away the ego, can shine away that place where you're stuck in separateness. Because if you see someone else is guilty, or even yourself is guilty, you're stuck in separateness. Guilt is the nail, you know, really the nail of the crucifixion. And the Course in Miracles, what the idea here is that Jesus, having achieved that divine consciousness where all he sees is love, and he's so clear that the rest is just an illusion, that he is now authorized, should we request it, to enter into our minds and help us, lift us above that spot where we're stuck. I can't get there by myself. And that's why the Course in Miracles says a miracle is a divine intercession from a thought system beyond our own. So like you said, we're all swimming in it all the time. The issue is developing our inner eye and developing our inner ear. And it takes practice. It's like yoga, you know, or going to the gym. You have to practice your muscles to build a new body. You know, it takes a constant repetition. And same with spiritual practice. It's not enough to just know it. We have to practice it through meditation. In the Course in Miracles, it's a workbook, 365 days of exercises, but whether it's the Kabbalah, whether it's TM, Islam, I mean, all the traditions have it, to really rebuild our attitudinal muscles.
You talk about in the book, you say, if only love is real, then why did God even allow the ego to exist? And why is that? Why do we even have an ego at all?
Well, it's a false belief. It doesn't actually exist.
Okay.
The Course in Miracles says God's love is all that is, and what is all encompassing can have no opposite. But what we have is free will. You
Yeah.
have the power to think whatever you want to think, but you don't have the power to establish what's true. Only God can do that. So when I think with love, the Course in Miracles says, we are co-creating with God. When we think without love, since only love is real, we're actually not thinking at all. We are hallucinating. And that's what this three-dimensional world is. It's a huge hallucination. And that's why Einstein said, time and space are illusions of consciousness, albeit he said persistent ones. That's why Buddha called it illusion or Maya. I mean, that's why some of us will go through something terrible. We go, this is a nightmare. This can't be happening. That's because on a certain level, it's not. And that's why when we hold a lover or a child in our arms, we go, oh, this is heaven, because it is.
Yes. I heard you say once in a talk that sometimes the greatest miracle, it's not splitting the Red Sea, it's having a change in perception and actually seeing what's real. And to ask God for that every day. Help me see. Help me see as it is, not as my mind thinks it is. You mentioned Einstein a few different times. And one of the things you say is that Jews say the Messiah is coming. Christians say that the Messiah has already come. Einstein says there is no time. And you said in this book, the mystic Messiah isn't coming from the outside, but from the inside. What does that mean? Help us understand that.
Well, first of all, the Messiah is the Savior. So let's look at the word salvation. What is there to be saved from? Your own insane thinking. Let's say you and I have an argument. My ego mind is going to attach itself to what you said that hurt my feelings. The spirit in me would be saying, you know, Marianne, in that moment, she lost sight of what's true. Can we
Right.
talk about all the wonderful things she's done for you? Can we talk about all the love that you've shared? Can we talk about all the truth that you know about each other? No, she said such and she knows me, but right? So it's two parallel universes, two parallel universes. One is the constellation of emotions, thoughts, and everything that will unfold with that, because one of us said something and then the other said something else, except as you and I know, this is not just about two girlfriends. This is about whole nations, right, that behave this way, right? Whereas there's another world, which is that you have trained yourself to extend yourself beyond perception, beyond what the senses tell you, the physical senses tell you, to what the heart knows to be true. The Messiah is that within you that reminds you of the truth. When the Course in Miracles talks about the second coming, it says, when he shall return, and then it puts in parentheses, when he shall be perceived. Your Savior, the Course in Miracles says, is a person in front of you. If you are willing to see their innocence, they are saving you from your own sense of guilt. The Messiah is standing right in front of you, if you are willing to see that he is in everyone. Once again, easier said than done, because it is so 180 degrees away from the thinking of the world. The stuff is thick. The stuff is crusty. But enlightenment, you know, the Course in Miracles says enlightenment begins as an abstract concept and takes a journey without distance from the head to the heart. And the more we practice it, the better we get at it, you know. I know for myself, I used to say all the time, well, you know, I'm not like Jesus, you know, I'm not some perfected consciousness, but I'm a whole lot better than I used to be. But I don't say that anymore, because the world is in such shape right now that that gap between you and perfection, enlightenment, Jesus, whatever, we better get serious about the task of closing that gap now. Because the state of the world is a reflection of who we are. And ultimately, the state of the world will not change unless enough of us change. So even though we might feel like, I'm good, I'm good is not good enough. And Jesus is a way to make a direct vertical ascent.
I think that one of the things that I see in the world is that people don't really know what love is, and they think love is earned. And because they didn't necessarily feel unconditional love growing up, they deeply have shame and they deeply don't love themselves. And they're so identified with their ego that they feel so behind the eight ball and so broken that the idea of being better when they are so critical deeply of themselves makes it feel impossible. And one of the things that really gave me my wings was when Rabbi Aaron said to me 25 years ago, "You're a masterpiece. You're a piece of the master. God loves you. You are so loved, period, just because." And from there, I could become, because all that was feeling wrong about me was melted away, and I was able to see myself and the world as it is, right? So can you help those who might be unconsciously or consciously extremely unkind to themselves start to understand how much love runs to them and through them?
Well, first of all, one of the lessons in the Course in Miracles that meant the most to me, I remember actually having a profound emotional reaction to it when I first read it, is a lesson: I am as God created me. God only creates perfection, and that is you. No, no more, no less than anyone else. And what he created, which is perfect, cannot be altered and it cannot be destroyed. Yes, most of us have had experiences in which people have made us feel, instead of loved, instead of appreciated, shamed, made fun of, mocked, demeaned, attacked, assaulted, whatever. However, the mistake that you see in a lot of modern psychotherapeutic response, including in the higher consciousness community, Kathy, is, do you have to process that pain? Yes. But there's a place where processing becomes spewing. There's a place where honoring your pain becomes indulging your pain. That symbolically in the Christian is the 3 days between the crucifixion and the resurrection. The 3 days between the crucifixion and the resurrection represents the symbolic time it takes from the time of crucifixion, the trauma of your past, the shaming of your past, and so forth, and the resurrection, which is you're healed of all that and you've moved beyond it. The same in the Old Testament, that's the meaning of the 40 years that the Israelites wandered in the desert between the time of enslavement by the Pharaoh and deliverance into the promised land. But, too many of us in too many ways have been taught, no, cling to the cross. I heard it once said, somebody said, get off the cross, we need the wood. You're not going to ultimately get over all that by working it through in a traditional way. You're going to get over all that when you walk into a room and you see a human being and you give to them that which you were not given.
Yes.
It's not, the Course says, don't look to yourself to find yourself, for that's not where you are. You are in relationship with other people. Where you see this big time in my mind is about childhood. A generation, the most obsessed with my childhood, my childhood, my childhood. It's not an accident that generation is the most neglectful of the children in our midst. How you treat children today is one of the ways that you heal.
Yes.
If you were not cherished as a child, cherish a child today. So, I remember driving up to a spiritual center type place, and there was a big sign, love yourself. Well, it's not an accident. Jesus's message was not love yourself. It's love each other, love one another. Because ultimately, yes, I cannot love you unless I love myself, but I cannot love myself until I love you. And that's what I remember when I first started reading the Course in Miracles. That's what it taught me. Get over yourself. This self-reference that is so psychologically and spiritually in vogue is not helping us. because it increases the sense of separation. Me, 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 me.
Yeah, it's
Really.
fascinating because most of the time when people on my podcast ask me some kind of question, they're looking for what is outside of themselves to make themselves whole. And it's very ego centered. And I often say we came to the world with much bigger dreams than piles of things.
That's right.
And your
In fact,
dream,
no, oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, none of those piles of things, the Course in Miracles says, nothing in this world has deep enough roots to sustain you. And that's where you have a difference in languaging in the Course in Miracles between magic and miracles. If you're just trying to manifest, everything's a manifestation craze now, right? You're just seeking to manifest, manifest, manifest. It's almost like using God as your errand boy. I want a bigger house. I want this many figures in my salary, blah, blah, blah. The miraculous is not where you say, this is what I want the world to give me. It's where you say, how can I, everything that I am, my failures, my successes, my skills, my propensities, my talents, how can I be used to make the world a more loving and beautiful place? When we're in that consciousness, one of the exercises is, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? Then the universe is programmed to bring to us everything that could possibly contribute to our happiness. You know, my first book, A Return to Love, I was just busy working with AIDS patients and people who were sick and dying and so forth. And then when that book came out and it made a lot of money,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow. Because I didn't even have the consciousness of bestseller.
Mm.
I didn't even have the consciousness of any of that. I had just been dwelling in a space that wasn't about any of that. And I knew there was a relationship between the two. Because you take care of your part of the garden. That's all you have to care about. And the universe will give you more and more opportunities to expand your garden. And then your challenge is that what you're using it for?
Right. Yeah. It's so gorgeous. My father just passed away very recently,
Oh, I'm
July
so
3rd,
sorry.
but it was
I'm so sorry.
so gorgeous. I sat with him in hospice and was there when he passed and then went through Shiva, sitting Shiva. And I didn't want Shiva to end because the level of presence, the level of goodness in every moment, people who walked in the home, the way they walked in the home, the way we sat, the way I held my dad's hand and fed him the ice and rubbed his face. If somebody would have said to me in any of those moments, guess what? You just won a shopping spree on Madison Avenue, it would have seemed ridiculous. There was nothing missing. It was so filled with this love back and forth all around. And the consciousness in the room was so, it was so dropped into everything we come here seeking. And I said at the funeral, if my dad knew that he was going to come to this lifetime just for this last week and what he experienced, he would have signed up for the journey just for this week. And how we all get so distracted from what truly fills us and what a gift it is to give to someone and be given in return and back and forth. It completely and totally healed me, that experience.
There are a
And
couple of
yeah,
things.
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No,
No,
please
I
go ahead.
didn't mean to interrupt. That was very profound. A couple of things about what you just said. Modern Jews, uh, I've had times in my own family, people said, well, we don't need to do 7. We don't need to do 7 days and nights. And I remember saying, it's a gift to us.
Yeah.
The psychology of religion,
Yes.
that's what this book is about too. The psychotherapeutic that really, you know, when Moses lived, when Jesus lived, modern psychotherapy, there were no words for it yet. So when Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world, he meant the psyche. And all religious practice, if you look at it through the mystical lens, it's for you. Sitting Shiva is for us. It's not just who we're praying for. So, but this, no, we won't have to do 7. We'll do 4. And the other thing that you mentioned that I think I've seen a lot in my work is about our parents getting older and our parents starting to pass. And there have been times in my work with, an audience full of people, I'll say, guys, that's part of the meaning of this time of our lives.
Yeah.
It's not just an inconvenience or something. This, I heard actually at a funeral last week, and somebody read a poem by John Donahue. And there was some line in it about finding the insight in every situation. Being present, you're right, for death and for death of those who came before us. I live with a lot of regret that I wasn't more present. My sister died of cancer at 44.
Ugh.
And my mother said to me at the time, and she had 3 little girls. She had a husband and 3 little girls. And my mother said to me at the time, would you consider moving back to Houston? And I was in LA, and I was like, oh no, mommy, I can't possibly, blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting that that was my mother, because if that were me as a mother, you know what I would have said to me? What part of you does not understand what's going on here? What part of you? And you know how God showed me? Later, I met and knew for a little while the singer Bonnie Raitt, and her brother had cancer. She dropped everything to be there for him. And that was a perfect lesson for me. Bonnie Raitt's career is bigger than yours. And she dropped everything to be there for him. But that's what it took to open my eyes. And I think that this issue of being there for our parents.
I want to say something about, in Hebrew, there's a word for regret. It's charata, and it's healthy regret. It's the
That's
healthy.
right. Only a sociopath feels no remorse.
Right. And I remember the last time you were on the podcast, at the very end, I said to you, what is one thing that everyone could do today that would make the world better? And you said, reach out to someone who you have a grievance with and send them love and send them forgiveness. And my regret, and why I just teared up, is that over the course of my life, my relationship with my dad has been complicated. My parents were divorced, and there was a period in my childhood where he and I were estranged. And then there was a period in my adult life where I wanted to, I'll just say the word, punish him probably for having not been there. And then only in the last, I would say 15 years, did we start to have this beautiful relationship. But it was a very distracted one because I have 3 children, and it was all about going to dinners and being with the kids. And when he was dying, and I was singing him Barry Manilow songs and playing him Diana Krall, I said, Dad, I want to have been here more. I want to have gone back and given you total forgiveness. What would it have cost me? What would it have cost me? And I say it because I think people who are listening, give it, because when it comes and the time comes, and that's the time you've had, I deeply said to myself, there was so much more dimension to him. He had done that repentance. He had reached out. He had wanted to do that. And I denied myself receiving more love from my father because my heart was closed. And I regret what I missed out on and what I missed out on giving to him.
That's
So I
exactly right.
totally get that feeling.
I remember throwing myself over my mother in the last few days of her life, crying and saying all of that. Also, when my sister died, she was 44, and
Ugh.
she had that experience. I've seen it around people. She had it where she was sitting up in bed and she had that Buddha light around her, which I've seen in other people. I was sitting next to her, and my brother was sitting at the end of the bed, and I said, we forgot to be siblings. Or I think I said, we forgot to be brothers and sisters. And it was just what you said. If I had said to my sister 5 years before, why don't you and Peter and I'll go out to dinner on Thursday? She said, well, I go to dinner with you guys. I have 3 children, Marianne. What are you talking about? I don't have time to go have dinner with you guys. It would have been like that. What? We're supposed to, the 3 of us? We didn't, exactly what you just said. And I'm crying saying this. I look at my brother and he goes, he nods. And my sister says, it's okay. We're doing it now. There are a lot of things where the Course, and I always said when my sister died that my biggest regret was not that I had not known her longer, but that I had not known her better. But even then it goes to the spiritual practice, because as you were saying, it just time spent with your father would not have necessarily done it. It would take more than quantity of time. It's willingness to go deep and be real into the waters of forgiveness. And the Course says in various places, more than once, it says, you will see all these things at the point of death, or you can see them now.
Oh. And you say in the book something so beautiful, which I wrote down. One day death will be seen not as punishment, but as a reward for
That's
a
the
life
Course.
well lived.
That's out of the Course.
What does that mean for us as we go through our life now? How can we chart a course to that?
Oh, it means a lot. You know, Carl Jung said that failure to deal with the subject of death robs the second half of life of its meaning. The Course in Miracles says, the physical birth is not a beginning but a continuation, and
Mhm.
physical death is not an end but a continuation. At my age, if I didn't have that sense, this would be a horrible time of my life.
Yeah.
As it is, I'm not afraid of death. I'm as afraid of dying as the next person, how you die and all of that. But death as a sense of continuation of life feels right to me, not just in my thinking, but in my feeling. The Course in Miracles says it's like taking off a suit of clothes.
Yeah.
You take off your clothes, your body's still there.
Yeah.
You take off your body, your spirit is still there, because what God creates is eternal and cannot be uncreated.
Yeah. I heard Ram Dass says for the soul, death is like taking off a very tight shoe.
That's
Yeah.
that book. I think it was Bartholomew, one of those general materials. That was the term. Yeah, death is like taking off a tight shoe.
So in the
He
book,
said, death is easy, birth. He said, now birth is hard, because
yeah,
you're squeezing this infinite being into this little space.
you say towards the second half of the book that there's three pillars of a life well lived. Share with us that so that as we're closing off this interview, we think about how to show up more in those three pillars.
Well, I don't remember the specific things that I said right then at that chapter, but one is knowing who you are. You know, in any situation, your power, and this is like you were talking about before, you said the most loving person is the most powerful person in the room. In any situation, your power lies in knowing who you are and knowing why you're there. Knowing who you are means I'm no better or worse than anyone else. I'm just a space of love, or not. The Course in Miracles says you were born again, and in any moment you do not bring the past with you. If you're bringing, oh, they might not like me, oh, I'm not as good as, oh, I'm better than, oh, why do I have to go there? All those thoughts are like clutter in front of the sun.
Mhm.
Instead, if you walk into any situation knowing I'm only here to love and be loved, and I'm going to blast the room with love before I even get there.
Ah,
So who am I and why am I here? I am only here to love. And when you silently, people know things subconsciously. When you walk into a room and people have been bitching about you and saying awful things, you can feel it.
oh yeah.
And when you go into a room and you're just there loving, blessing everybody in the room, they don't know why they like you, but they do. So to know, who am I really? I'm no different. The Course in Miracles says all of the children of God are special and none of the children of God are special. And then you're just there to love and you're there to be of service. And that issue of a well-lived life, you are there, whether it's your podcast or a book or your marriage or your motherhood or your position in your community, your nationality, your religion, whatever the corner of your experience, you are there to be the light, to be that which represents an alternative to the fear-based ways of the world. When Moses came back from Moab, he said, I will make of you a priestly people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in metaphysical sense, that means the human race. A priestly people means, are you a demonstration of the best of your human potential as a wife, as a mother, as a citizen, as a podcast as a human host, as a human being. It's a full-time job. See, asking, am I living a meaningful life? It's a full-time job at the end of the evening. How did I do? I remember
Mm,
Stevie Wonder having that old album, Songs in the Key of Life. And
yeah.
he said, God is the only free psychiatrist known throughout the world. We keep talking about people having self-esteem. The way to have self-esteem, the way to have self-respect is to do something that earns your own respect. So that at the end of the evening, you can look back at every single encounter, every single, because none of them were accidental. How did I do? Was I as gracious as I could have been? Was I as kind as I could have been? Was I as respectful as I could have been? Was I open to the opportunity in that moment to expand love? And it's a full-time job addressing that. Whereas the way we're taught to live on this earth, no, you have your goals, you have your agenda, you have your whatever, and we're peripheralizing the most important things. Whereas if we took the most important thing, which is showing up as a more loving human being in life, but it shouldn't, for you and me both. And I'm sure for many people, it takes the death of a parent is a big one.
Yeah. I think
But go there now. The Course in Miracles says try to go there now. Wait, it didn't take somebody's death.
I think part of what happens in people's consciousness is they give up. It's like this learned helplessness. Your brain will find the evidence of whatever you tell it it's true. So they'll say, what's the point? The whole world is gone to, it's the worst. It's this. There's nothing I could contribute. They overestimate how bad it is. They underestimate their power. And you say in the book, we don't have to create the world. It's already been created and created perfectly. Our problem is our attachment to an unreal aspect of it. That's such a paradigm shift to see it as it actually is available, right? And three people sitting on a park bench are sitting in three different realities based upon how they see the park, based upon how they see the world in their own mind. So I think it's not just hopeful, it's real to help us see reality as it actually is.
What you just described is very prevalent these days. This idea of the world is messed up, there's nothing I can do, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. The Course in Miracles would say that's why God sent you.
Yeah.
That's why God sent you.
Yeah.
That's why God sent you. So when you say Jesus is the savior of mankind, meaning he represents a consciousness which saves us from loveless thinking, he
Mm.
had a ministry, and so do you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world is in some very, very, very dangerous places today. But the ego takes that and goes, well, there's nothing I can do. The spirit says, and I will go in the way appointed me, that I might be a conduit for the love that heals all things.
Yeah.
It's 180 degrees away in thinking. And that's what meditation and prayer and practice, whatever it is that we do, helps us to change those attitudinal muscles so that we go from what can I get to what can I give? So that we go from the world is messed up to, wow, I better get busy.
Yeah.
I saw it in my presidential campaign, Kathy. People who just would not um, embrace what they wanted, this sense of it's not possible. What's
Right.
possible is what we make possible.
Right. Right. It's amazing what you have created in the world, the ripple effects. You can throw a small stone in the water and see a ripple. You can throw a really big stone and see a really big ripple. And the stone that you have thrown in over and over and over again, you'll never know in this lifetime how that has rippled, how that has touched people, how that has allowed so many good things to happen through that which you have put in the world. That is so extraordinary. So thank you for being that.
Thank you for being you, Kathy. Your generosity is one of your most beautiful qualities because there are people in politics who have said the exact opposite.
But that's
you
what
know,
that's the game that they play.
well, that's the game that they play. But those are two completely different realities. So please know that, and I saw you see both.
Hmm.
You live a different life because you are so kind. You live a different life because you were so generous. You know, once you realize there's only one of us here, and once you realize that what you do unto others, you are doing to yourself, the Course in Miracles says you become generous out of self-interest. So I could say, I hope that all the kindness and the blessings that you give to me come back to you 1,000-fold, but they already are.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
I'm so grateful and blessed that our paths have crossed a few times, but given the fact that we're tuning into the same radio station and the only song we're listening
you
to is
really are.
a love song. So I was bound to meet you in that love song. And I'm amazed that, especially in the journey you've just recently had, with all the ways that the biggest egos have come around you, that you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and writing another book and continuing to have the energy and space and bandwidth to just come back to what is for you, your practice. It is just so gorgeous. And I sometimes wonder if all of the things that you've been doing actually do way more for the world than being being inside of that beast, and I'm not sure. And I think just the truth telling that you've done already opened up so much. You know, it's like when Moses went up to Mount Sinai, God had first tried to speak directly to the people. They passed out. They couldn't handle all the truth. They literally, Jack Nicholson style, can't handle the truth. So Moses had to go up and bring it back down. They literally, it says they left their bodies. They passed out when they were directly spoken to by God. So I think little by little, our consciousness is waking up as a collective to be able to handle greater amounts of light, greater vessel, greater amount of capacity to hold it. And so it does move us toward it. It does move us there, little by little, because it has, what it does is it challenges people's beliefs of what they believe is north, south, east, and west. And so they can sometimes handle a little bit of that at a time. But it no doubt is already serving us, is what I want to say. What you're doing, how you're doing. It is serving, period. It's already doing medicine. It is, because this is how humanity moves forward. So I appreciate it so much. And it's not easy to do.
I appreciate your words. You're a very wise and profound woman, and I'm grateful to be in conversation with you. You just said something that is, you know, in Judaism, tikkun olam.
Yeah.
There is a gap between how the world is and how the world should be. So the Course in Miracles says that God's plan for the healing of the world is what's called the plan for the teachers of God. And you are sent into any circle where you could be of use. At this point, when it comes to the spiritual things that I've been teaching, et cetera, for 40 years,
Yeah.
I'm not needed like I once was. Listen to you. There's so many people. The only difference between me and you is I'm older. So I was talking about this stuff sooner.
Not sure about that, but okay.
But now there are so many wisdom teachers, and I'm proud to be among them. And I'm proud that there's so many. But there was a time when there were a few of us speaking some of this non-denominational metaphysical wisdom. You know, Martin Luther King said, in order to change the world, we must have quantitative changes in our circumstances and qualitative shifts in our souls.
Yeah, I agree. And I think all of it is a call. We're all being called up. We're all being called up
We're all being called up on every level.
on every
On
level.
every level.
Yeah. I loved every second. It is like time, we go beyond time. It's all five. I don't know if it's 5 minutes or 5,000 years. I just love you so much. And thank you for coming on. And obviously everyone can get the book anywhere and they can go get it. We'll put a link in the show notes, and God bless you forever.
Oh, God bless you, Kathy. I hope we're in a continuing conversation. Much love to you. Truly, thank you.
Thank you, babe.